Vayomar. He's beginning the bracha. Hashem Yisine Bo. Hashem had come to you from Sinai, V'zorach Miseir, Lomo, and he had radiated from Seir. Seir is the location of the Edomites. Hofiyamar Poron. He had come from Mount Poron, where the Arabs are. That's Yishmael. Vosim Rivos Kodesh. And he came with his 20,000 of his retinue, holy retinue. Mimino Eshtos Lomo. And to his right, there is the fire of law. We'll see what Rashi says. Yom Hashem B'Sinai Bo. Posach Tchilo B'Shvachu Shel Mokom. First, before he gives the bracha, he speaks about the praiseworthiness of Hashem. V'akach Posach B'Tzorchem Shel Yisrael. And then he speaks about the needs of Klal Yisrael, which are the brachos, the actual brachos, which is given to each one of the tribes. But he begins with Shvachu Shel Mokom. And even the praiseworthiness of Hashem, Yesh Bo Haskoras Chus Yisrael. He's mentioning why the Jews are meritorious. They should be worthy of the supplication, which ultimately he's going to ask. And that's the way we supplicate Hashem, that they're worthy of the bracha. So when he speaks about the Shevach, the praise of Hashem, within that, he's alluding to the specialness of Klal Yisrael. Meaning like this, it's interesting. The format of the Amida is first we speak about the praiseworthy, who is Hashem? Hakel, Hagod, Lagib, Vanora. These are the first three brachos of Shemon Esrei, of the Amida. Then we begin the requests. Atochonein, Hashivenu, and so on and so forth. And we find with Moshe Rabbeinu himself, when he was told he's not going into the land, Veschanan Hashem also, and he starts supplicating Hashem that he should annul the decree, he begins also, first speaking about the praiseworthiness of Hashem, and then he makes his request. Why? Now it's interesting. And in the understanding, what is it all about? Very often people come to me and they say, if I have a certain relationship, they said, could you introduce me to this person? Because I need financial support for my institution, and I need a very large amount of money. And this person could provide that. So I say to the person, to give that kind of money, it's all based on a relationship. Even if you are what you say you are, but unless you're known to that person, he's not giving you that kind of money. Everything's based on relationship. Even in fact, you are worthy. It is worthy to support. So don't think in a moment, I'm going to introduce you, and the first day you meet him, he's going to be so impressed, and he's going to give you, first he has to understand who you are. And after he understands who you are, and you understand who he is, then we talk about maybe him understanding and giving you the backing, the financial backing. L'havdil. We come to Hashem and says, Hashem, give us this, because you give us anything. But you realize, if you have to be worthy, that he should respond to your request. So first we have to value him. We have to recognize who is he. And God knows the sincerity of a person's heart. Do you recognize who I am? So first, whenever we make a request, we always begin with Shvachei Mokom. We speak about the praiseworthiness of Hashem. Who is he? This is who he is. He sustains life with chesed, and so on and so forth. We're acknowledging who he is. After we acknowledge who he is, then we make the request. We make the request. And one said, the Rambam, it's a famous argument, the Rambam and the Ramban, whether tefillah is doraisa or tefillah is drabanan. Whether tefillah is a Torah obligation, once in a 24-hour period, or it's only rabbinical. What it says, the Gemara says, in the Kriya Shema, you should serve him with all your heart. So the Gemara says, Ezu avodah shebelev. What's considered serving God with your heart? Zut tefillah. So the argument is the Rambam says that's a bona fide interpretation. Therefore, the obligation of tefillah is a doraisa. It's a Torah obligation. Ramban says it's a rabbinic interpretation. On a Torah level, one does not have an obligation to pray at once a day. It's rabbinical. So the Rambam says, so what is tefillah? Tefillah is acknowledging Hashem, you should serve with all your heart. Yet the Rambam rules that if one only says the first three brachos of the Amida, and you don't make your request, one does not fulfill this obligation of what? Of tefillah. So I asked why. Serve him with all your heart, that's tefillah. But if I've already acknowledged Hashem by saying the first bracha, what's contained, and the second and third bracha, what do I have to make my request? That's the question I asked. And the Rambam says you must, after you acknowledge him, you must make the request. And if not, one does not fulfill his Torah obligation of tefillah. Why not? Mark, before the bank opens up and they said, we're giving them money, we're lending money interest-free without a due date when you have to pay the loan. And a person doesn't go to take money from the bank. Now the question is, why not? You're not encumbered with the debt because the bank's not going to rein in on you. They're not going to take your property. They don't even want to lien on your property. Interest-free, who's not going to go? You know why people don't go? Because they don't believe that's true. Who ever heard of a bank giving money away without interest? And no due date. Whenever you pay, it's okay. Even if it's beyond your lifetime. It's not reality. If a person acknowledges Hashem and you're sincere and you mean what you're saying, the first three brachos, how do you not ask him? The not asking is an indication that all it is lip service. Because if you really believe what you said and you're true to what you're saying, how do you not ask for an endowment of intelligence and discretion and to bring you back and to heal you and to bless you? If that's what he is, so why don't you ask? The answer is, as they say, your action, just don't talk the talk, walk the walk. Not making the request is an indication that the opening statement is not sincere, because if it would be sincere and you really believed it, you'd make all the requests and you make the supplications. Therefore, Rambam says, if you don't supplicate Hashem after you've acknowledged him for what he is, therefore it has no value. You haven't fulfilled your obligation of what? Of tefillah for that reason. That's the way I understood it. So I'm saying, so whatever we find in the Torah, Moshe prays for himself. He speaks about Hashem, who Hashem is, and his praiseworthiness. And then he makes the request, the supplication. Moshe Rabbeinu, before he blesses Klal Yisrael, and he wants Hashem to respond to accommodate his blessing. He speaks about the praiseworthy Hashem, and within that praiseworthiness, the way he gave us the Torah at Sinai, he also speaks simultaneously about the worthiness of the Jews, that we accepted the Torah, that we're the only ones who accepted it, and all the other nations rejected it. Because as it says here, we'll see in a moment, when Hashem came to us to give us Torah, he came from many directions. Similar to what we read in last week's Parsha Hazinu, that like an eagle, when it comes to the nest of its young, it comes in not suddenly, as Rashi said earlier. It comes into among the trees, and he rustles the leaves and the branches because he doesn't want to startle his young. And even when he comes to his young, he hovers over them because the eagle is a very large bird. Lahavdil, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he gave us the Torah at Sinai, he didn't confront us directly. He came from many directions to give us the ability to gradually absorb who he is and to be able to tolerate that experience. So that's the source. But where did he come from, the four directions? After he had come and he offered the Torah to Edom, and he offered it to the Arabs, and he offered it to the nations of the world, he came from every direction because he's returning from all the various nations, and after they reject, they come to the Jews, and we said Nasa v'nishma. So in the praise, saying who Hashem is, that he came from here or there, wherever it is, we're also alluding that the Jews were the only ones who accepted the Torah. And after that, then he makes the request, I want you to confirm the bracha that I'm giving to every one of the 12 tribes. So that's what Rashi means over here. Then we speak about the word praiseworthy of Hashem, simultaneously intermingled with that, and we're alluding to the schus of Klal Yisrael. He went out to greet them when they stood under the mountain or at the foot of the mountain. Like a groom goes out to receive his bride. That Hashem went out to us. You think the subjects come out to the king does come out, but since the relationship was bride and groom, which indicates the avo, the love, therefore he came out to us. He first offered the Torah to Esair is Edom, the Edomites, and they rejected it. Harporon, Mount Poron, that's where the Yishmael are, the Arabs. And also they rejected it. What's Rivos Kodesh? Ribo is 10,000. Rivos is of the myriads. Miktsas Rivovos Malchei HaKodesh. V'lo kulam. Some of them, not all of them. Lo kederch bosav dom shemara kol kvod oshro v'taftarto b'yom chuposo. It's not like a mortal king that the day of his marriage he displays all his glory and all his wealth to show who he is. Hashem, this is the moment of the relationship. We're being taken as the groom, the bride to the groom. We're becoming the Goy Kodosh. Now, I just want to say, why is this bride and groom? We mentioned in the name of the Shalom that the Tefillah on Shabbos, we start with Ata Kidashta, Friday night. The morning is Yismach Moshe Matnos Chalko, and Mincha is Ato Echod Shimcha Echod. Ato Echod. Nikamchu so Goy Echod Moritz. So he says what it is when the Shabbos begins, this is when the Shekhinah, God's presence, enters into the existence, and that is the basis for Kedusha Shabbos. Just as the beginning creation, after the world was created on the seventh day, Hashem entered into existence to have a relationship with existence. Like that, but how does it start? It starts like the beginning of a relationship. First is the Kedushin, what we call the Ersin. And after you have the Kedushin, you have the Chuppah, which is what that's called the Chasana. That's the celebration. And after you have the celebration, you consummate the marriage, and that's when the bride and groom, they become one. Physically, they engage with one another. That's Ato Echom Shimcha Echot. As the Shabbos progresses, it starts at the lesser level, it goes to the next level. Ato Kiddush is Kiddushin. Yismach Moshe is the celebration of the wedding. And then Mincha time, it climaxes. There's the most intense level of God's presence. That's Ato Echom Shimcha Echot. Now, what is the basis for Kedusha? And this is the difference between us and the world, and nations of the world. At Sinai, we became Goy Kodosh. We became the holy people, the holy nation. When Hashem descended on Har Sinai, what happened to Har Sinai? What happened to the mountain? It became holy. So what is the basis for holiness? God's presence being there, that creates the holiness. Hashem is the source of all Kedusha. So whatever he's associated with assumes that has a semblance of where his presence is. When the Shekhinah was on the mountain, we weren't permitted to touch the mountain. The moment the divine presence ascended from the mountain, it was an ordinary piece of rock. Okay? When Moshe Rabbeinu was at the burning bush and he saw something unusual, the bush was burning, it wasn't consumed by fire. Immediately, the Malach says to him, Shal no lech me'araglecha, remove your shoes, ki admas kodesh. Who? The earth is holy, it's hallowed soil. You have to take off your shoes. Why? Because the Malach was there, representing Hashem, that was the Shekhinah. He took us at Sinai to be Goy Kodosh. What's Goy Kodosh? That means he will always be attached to us, never to remove himself from us. So if God's presence is always attached to us, what are we? We assume Kedusha. Because wherever God is at that special level, it becomes a location of Kedusha. Therefore, at Sinai, we became Goy Kodosh. But how does that happen? It's the attachment. When he attaches himself to us, that's Kedusha. This is that's Gechosen L'Kris Kala. The objective of a chosen, when he takes the Kala, is ultimately to become one. We become one. We become integrated, intermingled, and as a result of that, that's the basis for Kedusha. That's the Goy Kodosh. The famous Zohar says, Yisrael v'Raisu Kuchrichu Chatu. The Jewish people, the Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu all one. We're all intermeshed. How did it happen? Because we received the Torah at Sinai, as a result of that, we became Odom. That's what we became, Odom Atem Kriim. Odom, we assumed that new persona that we're able to develop and advance ourselves. How? Through the Torah. Because we said many times, Chavetz Chaim cites Reb Chaim Vital, who was the Talmud of Darizo, recorded all his writings. He writes that just as you have Ramachi Vorim, you have 248 parts to the body. In the neshama, they're Ramach components. They're 248 components in the neshama of a Jew. And we have 248 mitzvahs aseh, 248 positive commandments, each one corresponding to another component in the neshama. The mitzvahs aseh, this is Torah. Meaning our neshama assumed a new level. Until Sinai, our souls were like a Gentile soul, like a non-Jewish soul. Didn't have that special dimension to develop through a potential. At Sinai, we were endowed with a new level of neshama, a new potential. That to address the potential, you need the Torah. The Torah infuses it with that spiritual energy, which allows it to develop to achieve a level of perfection. And that's when we became the Goy Kodosh. That's only because because we accepted the Torah, which is Chochmas Hashem, which is God's wisdom, which is emes. This is the emes keneval timkor, acquire truth and don't sell it. This is Chosom Shal Kodesh Baruch Hu's emes. The signet of God is truth. Therefore, through that, that's how we became attached. We became intermingled, intermeshed with Hashem. That's the Chosen and Kala. I was just thinking, in the beginning of Parsha Shoftim, it says Shoftim. Every Jewish community has to have a court and have to have law enforcers. So the Medrash asks, the Medrash Chum asks a question, what do you mean? One of the Shev mitzvahs in Bnei Noach, one of the 7 Noahide laws, is Mishpatim. Non-Jews also have to have a judicial system. Mishpat. So why is it something unique to us? This has to do with the non-Jew also. So the Medrash answers, a non-Jew, a single judge is considered a court. A single witness is considered. A woman is considered. A person who's not even qualified according to Jewish law is credible evidence. By us, 2 witnesses, males, if the various levels of disqualification, you have to have so many judges. Therefore, our mishpat is different than the non-Jew. Now, what is the non-Jew? So we explained then, presumption, you can't extract money from presumption. Only bona fide evidence, only that could you extract money from a person. By a non-Jew, you don't need that. You can put a person to death through a single witness. With us, there's interrogation. By them, there's no interrogation. You don't need interrogation. Now, what's it all about? We said, Chosom Shal Kodesh Baruch Hu's emes. The signet of God is truth. That means it has to be established, fact, beyond any doubt, that this, with the veracity of the verdict, and therefore you have interrogation. Therefore you have so many judges. And therefore you take a vote. And you have to have a unanimous opinion after the vote that the person is guilty. All these different things. That's to establish the truth. The truth, the fact, evidence, which is established, that has to meet the criteria of truth. Why truth? Because that's Chosom Shel Kodesh Baruch Hu's emes. Because since God's signet is truth, it has to meet that standard of truth. Because again, what is the basis for our advancement, our development? It's because we became the Goy Kodosh. As a result of having that intimate relation with him, we have to reflect his persona, his attributes. That's the understanding. So it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu came towards us, Kechosen L'Kriskano. And what is the objective ultimately? The objective ultimately is to attach. That's the consummation. And once we were taken, we're considered, and that's the reason why it says, Torah Tziv Lanu Moshe Morosha Kilas Yaakov, and the Gemara tells us in Chagiga Al Tikre Morosha Ela Morosa. How do we become the betrothed of Hashem? Through the Torah. The Torah itself, that's how we became the betrothed of Hashem. And therefore, the Gemara tells us in Chagiga that if a non-Jew studies Torah, Chayv Misa. It's like he's committing adultery. The Torah is exclusive for the Jewish people. That is the relationship between us and Hashem. A non-Jew is not permitted to study Torah. And if he does, he has a very serious liability. He's deserving to put to death, not in court, but in terms of Hashem's eyes, you've crossed the line we're not permitted to do there. It's similar with the Gemara tells us that Akum Sheshabbos Chayv Misa. A non-Jew who observes the Shabbos, he's liable for the death penalty. Meaning, why? Because Shabbos is an intimate moment between us and Hashem. Somebody else comes in there, you don't belong there. And as a result of that, you've come into a location which is totally inappropriate for you to be there, because this is the moment of intimacy between Klal Yisrael and Hashem for that reason. Therefore, Goyshe Shabbos Chayv Misa. Goyshe Lomat Torah Chayv Misa. A non-Jew is not permitted to study Torah because that's the Morosa. Because that's how we became the betrothed of Hashem, is through the what? Through the Torah itself. But that's all part of Chosen Likros Kala at Sinai. He came towards us as a groom takes the bride in marriage, ultimately to consummate the marriage. The law in fire, Lomo. It was Mimino, it was from his right, he gave us Eshtos, Shoisek Suvim Me'oz Lefonov. Black fire on white fire. Noslan Beluchos Ksavyod Yemino. Right? He inscribed. Even the second Luchos. Who inscribed the second Luchos? Hashem. So that inscription is what? Noslan Luchos Ksavyod Yemino. Dover Acher Eish Dos Shnosalem Mitoch Eish. It was through fire. Sinai, it says the mountain was on fire, was billowing up smoke. You know, it's interesting. There's a medrash. It says over here, he came Mirivos Kodesh with the myriads of his angels. So the medrash says, you know, we had the Golim when we traveled in the desert. We traveled in a certain formation. What was that formation? When the Jews stood at Sinai and they saw HaKadosh Baruch coming with the Malachim, there were different echelons of angels that came with him. And he saw they were divided in groups surrounding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shechina, when it came. When they saw that, they wanted to have a similar formation that they should represent Hashem. Where was the Oron? The Machli Shechina was in the center. The Machli, the camp of Yisrael with Machli Levi encircled that camp. And that's something they wanted. When they saw the way the spiritual profile of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, with this heavenly malachim, with the retinue, they wanted similar. They wanted the Golim. Each one wanted to be identified in terms of his representation of spirituality. You know, it's interesting. The flag, each Shevet had a flag. Each flag was a color, was a different color. And each flag had an image on the flag. Yehuda was lion. Everyone, based on the brachos that Yaakov had given them, that was the picture on the flag, but it was a different color. What was the color? The Kohen wore the Choshen. The Choshen had colored stones on them. Each stone had a certain significance. The color of the flag was the same color as the stone, the colored stone on the Choshen. So those flags represented the spirituality of Klal Yisrael. Because those stones in the Choshen, that was part of what? That was part of Hashem, exactly how the Mishkan should be built. Those stones had to be specific kinds of stones, particular colors. So that reflected the spirituality of each one of the Shvatim. But those were the Golden. So when they saw the retinue and the formation, the spiritual formation of Hashem when he came to Sinai with the myriads of angels, that's something they wanted. They wanted to reflect that. And that's the reason why Kodesh Baruch gave us the gift that we traveled in the formation of that heavenly retinue that we had seen at Sinai. That's the Chazal. Gam chibi yisir chibi v'asashvotim. Kol echad ve'echad kori'am. Each one of the Shvatim are referred to as a people, as a nation. Binyamin levado hayosel livoled. Binyamin was the 12th child of Yaakov, and he wasn't born yet. Shema Kodesh Baruch Hu Yaakov goyu kal goyim yu mimcho. So we see that Binyamin's called Goy. That's Amim. Each one of the Shvatim are called Amim. Kol Kedosha biyodecha nafshet tzadikim gnuzes ito. The neshama of the tzadikim are hidden away with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The neshama of the tzadikim, kin shenemar voisem nefesh adonai tzur b'tzrachayim es Hashem Elokecho. Abigail said to David HaMelech, when she became his wife, she said, the soul of my master is bound up in the bond of life. We're talking about Olam Haba, right? Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelek Olam Haba. What does that mean?
We say that every Yiskel.
Yeah, exactly. But it comes from this puzzle.
That's where it comes, yeah.
Yeah. Now, what does that mean? We say Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelek Olam Haba. Every Jew has a share in the world to come. That means a non-Jew has a share in the world to come. What is Olam Haba? What's the world to come? It's having a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who's the Shema is able to cleave to Hashem. The whole concept is you cleave to Hashem Elokeichem. How do we cleave to Hashem? It's if the neshama has worthiness, the neshama has the ability to cleave, to attach itself. The Rachal writes in the Derech Hashem that every creation is finite. It's a very important concept. Every creation is finite. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite. How does the finite become part of an infinite system? So he says, if you take a branch and graft it onto a tree, and the graft is done correctly, eventually the branch becomes part of the ecology of the tree. The neshama of a Jew is finite. But if it's dovik, if it's worthy to attach itself to Hashem, that means it's become part of an infinite system. Hashem is infinite. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us exactly how do you graft yourself onto him. Observing the Torah. Assuming his characteristics, his attributes. That's how you dovik. When you dovik, you attach yourself, then you become part of his system. You become part of Ein Sof, you become part of the infinite. That's it's bound up in the bond of life. A non-Jew, could you graft a stone onto a tree? You can't. The stone has no relevance to what a tree is all about. The neshama of a Jew is a semblance of the spirituality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're a goy kadosh. Therefore, the neshama of a Jew could attach itself to Hashem. The neshama of a goy cannot. And that's what we say, the third brach, Ato kadosh shimcho kadosh, ukadoshim chol yom yad chaselo. Your kadosh set off at a level that we can't fathom. Your name is set off on a level we can't fathom. Ukadoshim chol yom yad chaselo. And those who sanctify you, who praise you every day, are kadoshim. Who are those? That's Klal Yisrael the Malochim. The kadoshim chol yom yad chaselo are Klal Yisrael the Malochim. Only we have relevance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The non-Jew, he has no relevance because they don't reflect the kadosh at that special level would have any relevance to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all about. At Sinai, we became goy kadosh. Hashem attached himself to us. Therefore, we have that expansive capacity that we reflect a semblance of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. And that's the ultimate Cellular Kid for that reason.
So, Rabbi, just
Yeah,
quickly,
we'll stop here.
just quickly,
Run
in the
out of
past,
time.
when you said the word Hatzvekim, highlighted that the hoof had a crown, and so to teach us the way you cleave to Hashem,
Yeah, sure. That's the maintain a cognizance.
the
It's not
cognizance.
brachas b'chol. That's something else. Yeah, it's on that the kuf atamat vacant. Correct.
That's a great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. It's unbelievable. We learned the Chumash. You learn one word. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, "Hafach bo, hafach bo, tekula bo." The Torah, as much as you turn it and it just keeps churning out the information. Just seeing one word, just in a phrase or anything. I mean, how it's almost like it's endless in terms of what it just awakens, and it alludes to so many almost endless information. Okay. We left off in Reish Ayin Aleph. So we turned the page. Yeah. Now we're holding here base. One second. Yeah, holding base. Now we know that a woman is absolved from a mitzvah sesei shesman groma. Any time-oriented mitzvah woman has no obligation. Shofar is time-oriented, time-determined. Sukkah, lulav, a woman has no obligation. The sukkah, she has no obligation to take the lulav, daled minim. Tzitzis is mitzvah shesman groma. Woman wears a four-cornered garment, she has no obligation to put tzitzis. Right? It's a Mishnah in Kedusha. Cites psukim, the basis for this. But yet Kiddush, we say obligation Friday night, only Friday night, but yet a woman is obligated in Kiddush, no less than a man. The question is why? There's Noshim Chayovs B'Kiddush, Afapi Shu Mitzvahs Essay Shazman Groma. Although it's a time-determined mitzvah, it's only Friday night. Nevertheless, a woman has an obligation in Kiddush. As I said, no less than a man. Zochas Yom HaShabbos L'Kacho. Pirish mitzvah ashat tlui b'zman. A mitzvah which is dependent on the time. Mishum de'iskish zoch l'shamar. We have the luchs rishonos. The Torah, Hashem says, zochas Yom HaShabbos L'Kacho. That's a positive. The second luchas is a shomer Yom HaShabbos L'Kacho. Shomer is the negative. Do not violate it. So since it's spoken in the positive and regarding negative commandments, there's no difference between a woman and a man. Even if it's time determined, a woman is bound no less than a man. So since the Torah associates the positive with the negative in the context of Shabbos, just as the negative, there's no differentiation between a man and a woman. Identically, regarding this mitzvah saseh, there was no difference. Therefore, a woman is obligated in Kiddush no less than a man for that reason. Okay?
Rabbi,
I'm listening.
is that a similar parallel to